joining us on those in person and also on the room. Yeah, sorry for like the delay due to the technical issue. We'll finally sort out everything here. And today we're very happy to have Dr. Herman Dong from the Department of Performing Arts Technology at the University of Michigan to give us this seminar talk this week. And Herman did his PhD at UC San Diego in the CS department and also got a lot of awards for the Rising Star in the AI, data science, and also the other workshops awards. So which is very exciting for us to hear like his research on the human-centered generative AI and also how to augment the human creativity with the machine learning. For example, like the music, audio, and the video creation, which will be definitely very cool applications I can see from this title. Okay, so Herman, take your time.
Cool. Sorry for the technical issues. Can Zoom folks hear us clear? Good. Cool. So today I will talk about mainly on my research on video editing. But my research is broadly on how can we augment human creativity using AI and especially nowadays generative AI. Cool. Let's see. Much of my research is inspired by this idea, music and technology co-evolves. Looking into the past, you see that, music and technology co-evolves all the way. In the past, in the golden era of classical music, you see that people looking into acoustic and the making of, instruments. And also, because of the invention of drum machines and all these synthesizers. Now we have new genres, think about new age, think about electronic music. This is always has been a two-way process where, creativity and AI inspire and challenges one another. In one way, art challenges technology, but at the same time, technology inspires new art. And so this, basically, my research is trying to bridge this gap between creativity and AI and explore how we can augment human creativity with AI. So my research touched on different aspects, started with music mostly, and getting into audio, and now recently I've been working also on video creation. But think about it, more broadly. It touched on films, theater, gaming, dance, podcasts, short videos, but also, music education, but also music therapy. So this is like a broad overview of some of the, generative AI usage and application domains for, these technology for music, audio, and video creating. So my research can be broadly categorized into three directions. Today I will focus more on video editing, but most of my work is actually on music, and I am now starting a group in the music department in the performance arts. Performance art department in the music school, music theater and dance school. But these are some of my research. So first, I work on novel generative models for new domains. If we have time at the end of this talk, I will showcase some of these earlier research of my work. But I've worked on, multi-track music generation, think about, generating MIDI, generating sounds and music, but also text to music generation, and more recently, video to music generation, but also I built symbolic music processing tools so that you can work on music on machines. The other big direction of my research is on AI-assisted tools for content creation. So think about now we are not just trying to generate music or audio or videos from scratch. Now we're thinking about how AI can be part of the process. So I work on violin performance synthesis, that's sort of like synthesizers, but also music instrumentation, music arrangement, and music harmonization. And the key is to see how these AI technology can be embedded into the process of human creation. And lastly, more recently, I work on a lot of multimodal generative models for content creation. It presents, unique challenge because of the multimodality nature of the data that we are processing with. And so today, mainly my talk will be about long to short video editing. Think about it, teaser generation or trailer generation. How do you cut, select, and rearrange videos into a short forms? And I also work on text query sound separation and text to audio synthesis, which I will touch on if we have time in the end. Cool. So again, today I will mainly focus on this a new line of research in my group. So it's on video editing. So, think about video editing, and if you've been working on some of the Gen AI, recent Gen AI progress on video editing, you might think about, well, turn my face into like a bear, like a cat. But now we are talking about video editing in another sense. So think about in film processing, film production, what do people want for video editing? So the core of video editing is, think about we have so many different kinds of, heterogeneous source of materials. We have potentially interview footage. We potentially have, some background information about the topic, the context. We will have some activity footage. We will also have, interview footage for other subjects rather than the, main subject. So these kind of different heterogeneous source. And the core of video editing is think about how we can potentially combine and understand these content and together compose a story. And so that's what I'm very interested in. And we are thinking about how we can use AI to, augment this process to be integrated into professional video production workflow that people have been using. So, one of the reasons we are working on short video generation or teaser generation is because, nowadays we have this fast growing short video platforms. So, in the past, we think about, videos are these long form platforms onto YouTube and different channels. But, nowadays, things are changing. People now also want to create these short videos. YouTube shows, Instagram and Facebook Reels, and all other different platforms. So, on one hand, for content creators, this help promote their long video contents. So they will create maybe like a teaser or like a commercials to promote their long video contents. But at the same time, for us content consumers, nowadays you spend more time on Netflix selecting what you want to watch rather than actually watching it. So, it helps us digest information in a more engaging way and potentially, help you to guide you toward how you want to spend your time. So this brings us to our first project. So today's work will be mainly to follow-up work. The first one is an iClear paper that we published last year. It's called Teaser Gen, generating teasers for long documentaries. So we will get into why documentaries. There's a reason. So this is a joint work with mainly led by Weihan Xu. She was at Duke University, but now she's at MIT as a research assistant, and she's on the job market. So anyone you are interested in, she's doing great and leading these efforts on my work on video editing. Cool. So why documentaries? You might ask. So, oftentimes if you look at some of these, trailer generation or video editing work, you think about, well, can we do film? And then one of the biggest challenge in academic research is like, how can we be reproducible, right? And so unfortunately, these film data, it's just never possible to download. So we look around and think about then how can we potentially alleviate this challenge. So we think about different forms of videos, and then we realize, well, documentary might be a very good source of data to work on this video editing idea. So, we hop on, YouTube. There's tons of, documentary videos on YouTube, and these are all from, reputable sources. Like in our data set is from, National Geographic, PBS, and also DW documentaries. And potentially, we are also interested in expanding into other, resources. But, one thing very cool about these documentaries available on YouTube is that they are naturally, a lot of them, naturally is given in this format where you have a very short teaser at the very beginning. It's like 1 to 3 minutes, and then you will have the main content. So this naturally provide us a very nice, training data for our tests. Think about teaser generation. It's essentially going from these long body content and try to rearrange it so that we can generate the teaser here. I think my slide is in the wrong order. So that's essentially what we want to do. So teaser gen is trying to see how we can, understand this long body content and then try to grab different information and rearrange that video into a short format. So to enable these, we basically build this data set. It's like 1,000 and 1,200 high quality documentaries paired with teasers. That's basically what we need to do for the annotation is just like finding that boundary and then that timestamp. And then we can break this video into two chunks. And that will be our inputs and outputs that we want to train our model to learn from. It's actually quite huge, even though it's like 1,200 of them. But think about these are documentaries, so these are actually quite long. So it's actually 689 hours in total. Cool. So now think about how can we potentially address this. So teaser generation. I just want to provide some context because you might think about isn't it like video highlight detection? But it's different because teaser, you need a cohesive narrative. And there's also one of our ongoing work to think about, potentially we want to have this promptable interaction so that you can determine what kind of story you want to focus on for this short video. But at the same time, it's unlike video summarization. It has to be interesting and engaging. And it also unlike a movie trailer, a documentary teaser is more narration focused, and that will driven what our proposed methodology is based on. And finally, documentary teasers needs to preserve the factual accuracy. So this is different from think about just pure video generation where you generate a bunch of things, but potentially these are not real footage. And we are thinking about how can we preserve the factual accuracy. And in the second project, not in this first project, we will see how we can potentially embed real footage into our outputs. Cool. So here is just an overview of what our overall framework is like. So we adopted the narration center approach for this long to short video editing. This is a new task, potentially overlap with teaser generation and trailer generation. But in general, this is a very high compression rate compared to previous work. So what we did is that in documentary, oftentimes you have all these information embedded mostly in the narrative, and visual act more like a accompaniment role. So what we do is that we grab all these audio components. It's mainly narration, and we do speech recognition. We also have to do source separation to remove the music and sound effects. But essentially, what we want is the script. And then with the script, then we have to generate the narration. So think about, we can prompt ChatGPT to go from these 40 minutes long narrative all the way to this 1 to 3 minute narrative. And that's essentially what we did. And then we synthesize these sound using TTS. And now you will have this audio track. But now the question would be then, well, this is just purely, text processing or just audio processing. What's the point of having video? So in the first project, we will see a different way how we approach in the second project. But in the first project, we're thinking about, well, if that's the way how we are going to do it, then how can we grab, accompaniment visuals to pair with our, generated narration? So basically, the core methodology we are proposing here is this narration video matching. Questions? Cool, yeah.
So this is quite interesting, and I watch this kind of documentary video on the YouTube. Obviously, they will have the option to choose the caption or not. So is that something they already have this kind of information stored with their video on the YouTube, or that also need to go through the speech recognition to figure?
Yeah, for us, we use Whisper to get the narration. Yeah. So
typical YouTube CC.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't do it. Yeah. Some of them has CC, some of them doesn't have that. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
So probably they have to upload that with their video. If they.
I think there are two ways. I mean, if it's like, professional channels, usually they upload their own CC, scripts, but there's also like auto-generated ones, which would be, essentially similar to, using Whisper to get the script.
Exactly like what we're having in the Zoom meeting, right? You
Yeah.
have to have.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess that will be the real-time speech recognition.
Yeah. So we are essentially doing that, but we don't have the ground truths, but, these Whisper output is pretty good. There are also challenges in, I think the biggest challenge is like, how do you break sentences? So usually, especially in interviews, these sentence will be very, incomplete. And those present some challenges, especially when you're using Whisper or, any ASR model. But in general, in this case, we get a huge chunk of narration. And what we want to do is just to summarize it. So in this case, having the, ground truth boundary doesn't, it's not necessary. Yeah. Cool. So, at the left, we are talking about, how we generate this narration. So that's, the core compression, or, think about editing, think about teaser generation. The core is at the left, but at the same time, the multimodality lies in how we can find, complementary video or visuals to accompany our narration. So that's essentially the core methodology we are proposing in this iClear work. So how do we do that? Now the question can be reformulated a little bit into, now we have a bunch of body content. Those are all the images or, frames from the video. And now we have a bunch of like synthesized narration where you do know what those means. So for each single sentence or potentially each chunk, you do know what that sentence is about. So say in this case, the layer buzz with excitement is jump, blah, blah, blah. So you do know something about what's going on in this narration. So the key now is to see how we can grab enough, a bunch of frames or video snippets so that it together compose and accompany that desired lens. So the way how we do it is basically grab like this pre-trained vision language model, but think about pre-trained vision language model is just a fancy name for CLIP. So CLIP tells you, how close, or, it's like a joint embedding for visual and language. So now with this, you can basically plot the curve. Like here, what you're seeing is that at the x-axis is the frames. So for all the way from first frame all the way to the last frame, and here we have like 40 minutes of video, and each of the frame we can compute at FPS equal 1 to the narration that we are trying to pair with. So now you have this curve, and what we are proposing is just like, well, we just change this optimal threshold from the top to the bottom, so that at some point you will reach that perfect threshold where all these video snippets that you have above that threshold will together within the desired lens. There's also some details we have to think about because, potentially there will be like a peak for the one single frame, and that's not something we want. Because later on we figured out, in our subjective test, where we found that the biggest complaint for some of our subjects are basically they don't like these like super fragmented videos. So think about you watch a video and every second you change a frame. It doesn't work. So we integrate in this algorithm. It's not just like, optimal threshold. There will also be some filtering so that we get rid of these very short snippets. But in general, once we have that, we can get a bunch of, desired, selected video clips together to accompany our narration. So here you can see, this is like a lower correspondence one, which doesn't necessarily correspond to the narration. But these selected ones will have something to do with the sentence that we want to pair with. Cool. So, here are some example results, but, these are video generations, so it's very hard to tell. If you want interested in, you definitely check out some of our, videos. Hopefully this
Under the scorching Egyptian sun,
okay,
Dr.
nice.
Zbigniew Shabransky led a team of archaeologists in Luxor, meticulously excavating the unique temple of the revolutionary female pharaoh Hatshepsut. The air buzzed with excitement as John and Maria unearthed a nearly 10-foot-tall abandoned Sphinx statue at one of Egypt's largest archaeological sites. Meanwhile, in Aswan, Martina Bartanova's team stumbled upon ancient human remains that could halt their exploration of an unopened tomb. The discovery of a child's remains and a miniature sphinx added under the scorching Egyptian sun.
Cool, I will pause here. But you can see that, these are definitely, TTS sounds, right? But still, I mean, the core is how we can find accompaniment visuals to pair with the synthesized sound. Yep.
Is the omnibus on the?
Oh, that's National Geographic. So that's the copyright. Yeah, that's the logo for NG. Yeah. So this is another example, but for time.
Under the scorching Egyptian sun.
Cool. So, how do we evaluate? So we actually propose a bunch of objective evaluation. And as I talk about, one thing that's very important is this, scene change rate. So you don't want it to change too frequently. So there's like a sweet spot of, the length, the average duration of these video snippets. But we also, try F1. Think about, you have 40 minutes of video and you want to select 1 minute of those and think about the F1 score. It will be super low, but it still tells us something. And repetitiveness, how, repetitive you are selecting similar frames, if it's too high, then definitely that's not a good sign. We also measure the text visual correspondence using an independent model different from our clip model. But in general, we can see how close this text and visual correspondence is. But of course, more importantly, is the subjective evaluation. So we look at coherence, alignment, engagingness, and also realness. Cool, and we can see our model definitely more effective in identifying relevant visual content. Cool. So likely you've seen some of these limitations. That's sort of the underlying assumption of the model. First, we assume that narration plays a more significant role than visuals. So this methodology might not work for think about films where potentially there's just no dialogue and narration at all, and there's something going on. So that will require tons of video to understand the relationship between different roles. So that's not something we can extend our methodology towards, but it requires a lot more multimodality video understanding ability. And also, secondly, teaser generation is a one-to-many mapping. So in this case, we are sort of, I think about it, like a one-one mapping, but in general, it's a generated process. And hopefully, what I would talk about in the future work section, I think one thing that I'm very excited about is to think about potentially can we do personalized, customized, and promptable storyline to indicate the model what our storyline will be like. So think about we have a vlog and potentially want to prompt it into focusing potentially on food or what I've been doing today, what are our meetings. There could be different perspective to look into these short videos. So that's also one of the biggest limitations. And lastly, this is something we will address in the next work I want to show about, is that cannot match interview scenes commonly seen in documentaries. So, going back to this methodology, you will realize that, well, when you want to do interviews, there is a very interesting thing because for clip, any interview scene just look like someone is talking. Right? It doesn't really know what the person is talking about, and potentially it's just someone talking. So this is a huge challenge, especially for documentary, because in documentaries, we have so many interviews, and potentially the key of interviews is that we don't even want to TTS and regenerate it. We want to have it embedded into our output. Cool. So we will move on to our next work. Where we are interested in looking into how we can potentially quote or embed interviews, footage into the output. So, back to this slide, think about video editing. We are still far away from this, right? We have a bunch of footage and we potentially want to understand what those footages are. And then we try to rearrange them. And, in teaser gen, we are not doing this. We are mainly, well, ChatGPT do all the summarization job. We grab the visuals and, well, it worked to some extent, but, it's not grabbing the original content. So the second work I want to talk about is published in NeurIPS last year. So this is regen multimodal retrieval embedding generation. We will get to that in a minute for long to show video editing. So pretty much the same setup. We still want to do documentary teaser generation. But now think about the goal now is to see how we can learn to quote the video. Let me put this here so that their face won't be blocked. Cool. So, think about what's our input long video. So we have a bunch of different scenes, right? And we have the transcript. And so, Whisper nowadays, or, these transcription models are very good at, they can even do speaker diarization. So once you have the speaker diarization, you do know which are the narration and which are the interviews. And so this brings us to this heterogeneous way to think about how can we approach these two different sources differently. So, for the other part, you think about, well, we still do this ChatGPT like, summarization or, promptable video, any text summarization model could work. So in general, we have the script and we want to generate a script, a shortened script. And here you will see there's like a placeholder quote. That's something we will see later. So, you will generate a story script where you can potentially place a placeholder where there could be some video interview put in that place. So for everything else, for all the, blue text that's being generated by these text summarization models, we will pretty much just do the same as in teaser gen that I just talked about. You TTS, you synthesizes, and then you do this narration visual matching to get all those. But what's more interesting about that is how do we do the quote? So now, think about once we have the quote, and we have originally these transcribed scripts. And so we do know where are the interviews. So we extract those interviews. So here now we have a bunch of, candidate quotable video clips. And now the idea is that then how do we go from this quote so that we can generate a prompt so that we can match and retrieve from that pool of quotable video clips so that we can place it, embed it into our output script, output video. So like you could imagine some of the way that you could do. So, we basically explore two things. So the one that you just see is this, indirect quote way. So where we are generating text, but at the same time, there will be a quote, placeholder, but we could also just directly generate a quote while we are doing this, script generation. So it requires some fine tuning on the, LLM that we are training, but anyway, these are two of the ways to do it. And I think more interestingly, I want to talk about how this indirect quote work. So once you have this quote, now the idea is that, well, we take this, placeholder text, because this is basically like, think about, well, we have this desired output script, and then we know that we want to have some, interview content in that place. And now we basically train this, encoder decoder, well, basically a fancy name for transformer. So we train this transformer so that it generate that quote content. And once we generate the quote content, we didn't use it directly to retrieve our video content, but rather we use the final EOS output. That's the summary token. We add one more token for the model to predict, and we use the embedding of that token as the query. So, the last layer of the last output. So usually you stop here, right? So once you have the EOS and you stop, now we have EOS, we would generate a summary token. And then that summary token, the last layer embedding, we will use it to do the retrieval. So now the whole framework, the encoder decoder or the transformer model is actually trained in two ways. First, it has to do this quote generation, but at the same time, it has to do a better, retrieval results. And these retrieval can be measured by just, maximizing this clip fitness. And there's different ways to think about this clip fitness, but again, the easiest way is like, think about, well, these clip, we also have the text narration, and you now have the quote. So now you basically compare the semantic overlap between them. But potentially you could also think about, these clips are actually multimodal. They have textual information. They also have visual information. So potentially you want to learn the mapping to combine both modality information from both modalities so that you get a better job measuring whether this is a good clip for you to retrieve. Cool. Anyway, so any questions so far? Very good. Cool. So now what we can do is a new kind of model where, part of the generation output is like, TTS, pure lead generation, but also we have these, real interview footage embedded in our outputs. So here we are just doing some, comparing, core retrieval models. So we do some, of course, some evaluation. I will skip this, but now potentially we can see some examples. I think these are the ground truths, not the outputs. Somehow I mess up. But you can see like an example here where, these are different versions of our models, but the yellow ones are the narration. And you can see that it's actually grabbing real video clips into its output. So it will change between, TTS sounds and, accompaniment visuals to, real video plus audio footage. Cool. So you can see how it is. So this is one of the
Crisis
examples.
has given me a lot. I've never before seen rents like they are right now. Lacks of money has opened up these opportunities for people like me to rent apartments in the city for such cheap.
This is very free, very free.
This is the interview.
The down economical level and the big freedom that we enjoy here in Athens gives you the point that you can do whatever you...
have been through a lot of crises and a lot of problems, and we are
This is
not like
another
most
interview clips.
Europeans where we expect the state to come and take care of us. This has never been the case in Greece because on a government level...
Cool. For time, I would skip, but it will also come back to back and forth. Sometimes these are narration to grow these interviews clips, but at the same time, these interview will be the genuine original interviews because we likely don't want to just like pair someone's face with a LM generated text, right? So these are very important, especially in documentary setup where we want to have factual accuracy, where we are using the genuine, original content embedded directly into the output.
Crisis has given me a lot.
Cool. So again, we do all these, objective evaluations similar to what we did. We also, of course, there are interviews, and now we have some other, evaluation metrics. But more importantly, subjective evaluation. You can see that our models can do a better job in grabbing how these interviews are effective, and it's coherent, aligned to the content, but also it feels real. Cool. So again, these limitation is still similar. Narration plays a significant role in videos, but especially here, even though I sort of talk about why we are doing this is to improve factual accuracy. But think about even nowadays, some video is basically you're misplacing of interviews in the wrong context. And the risk still exists. And it's not just in AI generated results. People can, intentionally create those videos where you misplace something into the wrong context. And so this is something we should definitely work more on to see how we can avoid these kind of, things. And, it has to be, potentially could be alleviated by context-aware video embeddings. So think about, when we are looking at these video clips, how do we know the context? It's just like a tiny, short video. So potentially you want this video embeddings that not just look at this like 1 minute clip, but rather the full lens of information. And you want to have that contextualized video embedding so that you better capture the actual meaning of that video clip. And of course, this is another big limitation where we need to rely on a successful scene segmentation. So this is possible in documentaries where we use speaker diarization to get the narration and the interview clips. But think about lecture recordings. It's pretty much just the same folk talking about everything. So how do you even do this quotable, identify these quotable, moments? And so, you have to think about different, more robust ways to do this scene segmentation. Any questions so far?
Maybe I just saw your next slide, so my question is going to be answered, but it seems like all these limitations you're talking about are the things that the professional editors are very good at, right?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Just, or, at the beginning you talked about how, it's about having a loop between these.
Yeah.
So I guess.
Yeah, I will cover that essentially. So I guess, this is like slowly progressing toward my dream. So, how can we towards AI assisted, video editing? So, this is one of the future work. I hope this could be done at some point. So, think about the real challenges that, even in this simplified text where we are doing long to show video editing, think about our input is already edited. And these are, within like a specific storyline, and you are basically just grabbing some information, aggregate it or compress it, rather than generating a new storyline on top of it. So think about the real challenges, like can we potentially think about multimodal RAG-based video editing? So you have a bunch of raw video materials, and now potentially the user will prompt it, say, well, out from all these video materials, can you create a short video about blah blah blah? And that blah 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 could be anything. It could be maybe focusing on the subject, maybe focusing on the environment, maybe focusing on the activities they are doing or the social interaction between people. And so it could be promptable. But now we will have to have this multimodal LLM where you can generate these editable video script. And so once you have this script, now the question would be, these raw video has to do something with the multimodal LLM so that it does know what are the available resource, what are the available footage to be put within your generated timeline. And at the same time, you will have this video retriever so that you do know how to go from that video script to select the correct video materials. So this also brings us to another limitation I didn't talk about in like the teaser gen and regen work, where the teaser the narration generation doesn't really depends on your available interview clips. So potentially it might generate something that's impossible. To think about, when you generate something, potentially I want to, interview for like a Nobel laureate. And well, it might not be possible. And potentially it might be possible in your footage. So it's important to have that information. And that's what this, that arrow down here is about, where you want to ground this multimodal LLM with all the possible video footage that you have. So it requires some video understanding, some video embedding model, but at least these multimodal LLM need to have been contextualized and grounded by these materials. So why this format? Because I think it's like, it's like a direct integration into, video editing software. Because, look at this timeline view and think about what we've been talking about with all these JSON-like things. Essentially, they are the same, right? It's just presented in a different way, right? Because you have all these timing, you have all these, it's sort of like a script in the textual format, but it can be directly or seamlessly integrated into existing creative workflow. So everything here now, if you generate some scripts, if you don't like it, you can change it. If you don't like any certain, specific video being retrieved, you can change it to another one and you can tweak it. And I think that's very interesting to me because now it becomes a partner, AI creative partner rather than, this like end-to-end fully automated AI models. Another thing potentially might be interesting is like for academia settings. So, think about lecture recap. So some of the ideas, if you have ever played with, Notebook LM, you can do some summarization. You could potentially, understand some complex resources and organize it into, organized format. But, still there are challenges about, can we embed, real footage or real information into our generated outputs. So, think about, I would like to review the concept of recurrent neural networks, how does an RNN work? And then, some kind of model could potentially generate these, interactive lecture recap. And then potentially students might ask, follow-up question. And then, it will adapt and create follow-up on that. So, think about this, once we have this promptable and, RAG-based video editing software, now you can actually create this conversational or personalized interactive video editing, but also, sort of like a video conversation tools. Cool, I think this is the same. Just like go over how potentially we can do it, but it's similar to what we've been doing. So I guess the whole point here is to think about, how we can go from retrieval augmented generation to retrieval embedded generation, where, retrieval augmented generation is like grabbing a bunch of things and then use it as the prompt, as the reference. But still, everything generated is synthesized. It's like, how could you trust those outputs? But think about documentaries. Why do we want interviews in that in documentary? Because those are the genuine, original, unordered content. So can an LM learn to quote and embed the quote properly? How to quote materials in other modality? We talk about video. Potentially, if you have these understanding model, then you can do audio, image, video, sensor data in any ways to integrate it into your outputs. So think about RAG is like we have multimodal things in the input side, but the output still text only. But now, can we think about the other way where outputs also have all these multimodal data embedded in the output stream? So what do we need? It's quite a lot. So you need a retriever that can identify candidate quotable materials, but at the same time, you also need this very strong, powerful multimodal LLM that can understand multimodal data so that you can do something like this. And of course, I'm interested in music, and people are like, why do you want to work on video? So, I see some potentials in grabbing this idea into music production. So think about when you are creating music, most of the time it's not like text to music, you prompt it and then you generate something. It's more like an interactive way where well, I want something to some loops, some samples to provide some vibe here, and so you started to prompt it and then you grab something. So how can we integrate Gen AI into music production? So think about nowadays all these agentic AI, retrieval augmented generation, and potentially what we are proposing here, retrieval embedded generation could also be the way out for music production. Cool. I guess that's a good point to pause. Any questions? Cool. So if you want, I can quickly go over some of the other things I'd work, but any questions so far?
I guess my main question from the beginning too is, one of the sort of things I hear mostly from the actual content creators is the training is using, different data, and then they're not being properly they're copyrighted things and they're not being properly paid for those things or whatever. So, I think you did the training of the video editing with all the different documentaries, right? Not just National Geographic, for example. So is that right?
There are 3 sources. Yeah.
So all 3 together.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. So then I guess they might agree with each other because they're all nonprofits, right? But are people thinking about a way during the training time itself to know basically how much a contribution?
Oh, yeah.
And how to properly support the arts.
Yeah. I can break it into like the legal way of looking into it. First is like a lot of people are actually looking into it. So attribution for training, but also attribution for inference. It's actually two topics. So one is like how much content are actually being stored in your trained, models. Is there any way go from this pre-trained model to solicit the original content from that? And that's actually a huge legal dispute nowadays. Some of these bigger, legal conflict is about, well, is the trained model a derivative of the original training data? And it's still ongoing debate. And, as a machine learning researcher, you would think about, well, is this possible? I wouldn't say it's impossible. There's a tiny chance that you can potentially just recreate the original content. And now attribution is another challenge, especially in training, because like how do you determine what percentage of that trend data is based on the training data? But for inference, I think it's easier. It's not solved yet, but at least people are thinking about, potentially there are tons of, attribution models that look into, how much percentage are being influenced by a certain training data. And of course, there will also be bias again, in this attribution models to think about, music generation model potentially, a lot of portion go to, Taylor Swift, even though potentially that's not the biggest chunk. But there will be challenges, but I guess people are working on it. And I think thinking about it from the inference side, I think would potentially create a new kind of, business model so that it can also profit, artists who create the work. And potentially if the artists want to use some of these Gen AI tools, they are also wanting to know whether they can potentially attribute and, potentially pay back and create this new business model. So a lot of things that's actually being discussed. And yeah.
Easily integratable into the kinds of things you did today? Or is it basically like those people are doing that research and we do our research that ignores it?
Well, I mean, for the generation part, I think we are using LLM. So I don't think lots of these LLMs are actually doing attribution at all. I mean, for image generation, for music generation, people are thinking about attribution. But for LLM, RAG is one way is like potentially it give you some reference so that you potentially knows where it's being inspired. But one of the idea of why we are doing this, retrieval embedded generation is like it's explicit.
Yeah.
So you do know what these content is. So I do think that's the way out, right? Because if you are doing video generation, like generate, some footage about something, and then for one hand, it's like it's not real, it's fake. But on the other hand, is like how do you attribute what are the original content holder? So having these integrated, explicit quoting, I think is actually definitely a better way to think about how we can potentially solve this issue. Yeah. So I would say, partly is actually already included as the sort of like the goal of this work, to have those being explicitly embedded.
But I guess the clips that you're putting in there are from the video that the person wants to edit in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
the training part is videos they don't own.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think the training part, I think it's always really tricky. So think about like foundational model. It's like, is clip reasonable? Like, do we have to pay for all the content for clip? Like even it's just like an embedded model for understanding text and image, and also think about ResNet, think about ImageNet. So all these model, I think currently, at least for generative models, I think attribution is very important. For foundational model that's not doing generative, I think the general consensus is like, I don't even know whether it's possible to do attribution. But at the same time, I think that's also another real concern. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. For us, what we are training is not essentially that generative. A lot of it is like retrieving, so understanding, like getting the embedding rather than generating new content directly. Yeah.
Great. So I think since we're almost time here, I think
Yeah,
we'll use the
definitely.
remaining time to address the question. I think there is
Okay, cool.
Yeah. You see the chat.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Sorry. Let me see. What was the length and size of the video content that was consumed by the VLM model for visual content extraction for teaser generation? The average clip length was around 30 minutes. Did you shorten it before VLM ingestions or chunked processing? So here for VLM, most of it we are doing frame by frame processing, which is sad, but that's the way how we are doing it. So potentially, you know, video understanding model will definitely do better. And it's actually two things. So first, you know, think about visual accompany. So when we find visuals for narration, we are doing frame by frame. So those are clip models. So it's not for video understanding model. But for the second part, when we are doing that, you know, understanding the clip so that we find a quotable clip to embed into our, you know, to replace the quote placeholder, then in that case, then we have to think about video embedded. But still, I think we are using, I forgot the details, but, you know, I think we try both. We have like video like clip based, and then we train another models to aggregate that information, but we also try, you know, video understanding model to get the embedding. Yeah, so we have to chunk it because 30 minutes, there's no way we can just send it into it. So we have to chunk it. And that's based on, you know, because for documentary, we can do speaker directions so that we can chunk it into different slices. Or, you know, think about sentences, we can chunk it into shortened clips.
Great. Is there any last minute
Cool.
question?
Yeah, anyway, I would just show the final slide. Yeah, where are the slides? Those are some of the other works, you know, music and audio generation. If you're interested, just let me know. But where's the last slide? Oh, yeah, this is Pat. So performance art technology. So yeah, you know, just to thank, you know, acknowledge all my, you know, fantastic collaborators and some funding sources. Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the feedback. Yeah, happy to reach out if you have any question offline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for joining on Zoom.
Yes, I can. Other people, any other.